Welcome to Monster Monday. So, obviously, I did not do Slasher Sunday or Stephen King Saturday. Something came up, and I did watch a Stephen King movie for Stephen King Saturday, which was Secret Window, but I did not get to reviewing it in time to get it up by Saturday. So, I will record that review and put it up next Saturday, and I will get back to the Friday the 13th then as well. But I wanted to finally watch The Thing from Another World, which John Carpenter's classic 82 film is based on. And I had seen this once before, but I only remembered very, very little about it. And I honestly, for a minute, was like, am I just remembering this because there's clips from it in John Carpenter's Halloween? No. I do remember watching this, but it was 20 years ago or more, and at that time I was definitely not into it, and so I wasn't really paying that much attention. This time I really did try to give it its fair shake, but full disclosure, I'm not a fan of older movies. They just don't do it for me, whether I'm uncultured swine or whatever it is. They just bore me, and I don't care for the dialogue. I don't care for the acting. I don't care for how the films look. It just doesn't appeal to me, and I'm not going to try to pretend that it does to look cool. They just don't, That's why I've never really seen any of the Frankenstein, Dracula, the Universal monster movies. I've seen very, very few of those. Kind of like the first in those series. I've seen Dracula, I've seen Frankenstein, I saw Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I think that's it. Maybe I saw Bride of Frankenstein, I don't know. But I do have that 30 movie box set, which I intend to knock out for Monster Mondays, maybe 30 Monster Mondays in a row. So we'll get there. But for right now, let's talk about The Thing from Another World. Did I like this? And can I add this to the very small list of films that came out before the 60s that I enjoyed? No. No, this is just yet another film like that, where the dialogue just it's too punchy and too fast and too pepped up, and I honestly was having a hard time following it, and the acting in which that dialogue is delivered through, I find to be very unappealing, very hammy, very theatrical, and very unrealistic. And I get it. That's I'm not a total moron. I get that that's the style. I get that that's the allure to people who love these kinds of movies. I just don't. I like modern cinema, and I obviously late 70s, 80s slashers and horror as well, but I much prefer the films of today where everything looks immaculate and there's all these new crazy camera techniques and special effects, and the acting is mostly really great, and the scripts are, for me, much better. I know that that's blasphemy for some people. Some people think the writing today is terrible and that the writing used to be great back then. And that's just going to be, a taste thing. And for me, it's just, this isn't it. This just doesn't appeal to me. I didn't grow up on these kinds of movies, so that might play a factor. But I don't really know what it is, but it is what it is. And there have been films in the past that are older like this that I have preferred. Some of the Hammer films, the Quatermass films, stuff like that, or what was that movie called? I like the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's the 50s, right? That's 56. And The Blob, it was all right. And then something like Year Zero, Ground Zero, or In the Year Zero, or something like that. I remember liking that one okay, but there's very, very few. And this just honestly wasn't one of them. But I can see and recognize that this is what led to my, what I consider to be the greatest horror movie of all time in John Carpenter's The Thing. So I respect it. I respect that it exists. You know what, though? It's funny is that this one, story-wise, reminded me a little bit more of the Thing prequel than it did John Carpenter's movie. Just because they dig the creature out of the ice, bring it back, the thing breaks out of the ice, it's in the compound. It feels a little bit more like the prequel. Now, of course, in John Carpenter's original, they go to the place, the Norwegian camp, where the prequel takes place, and they kind of experience it as if that's already happened. It's almost like the Norwegian camp is the camp from this movie. They're like remaking it from an outsider's perspective. Like they're coming upon this location in the original from the Carpenters. Now, of course, the ending and what happens and transpires there and all this completely different. But what I'm saying is that like finding the block of ice where the thing has come out, let's just say in this version, this 50s version, 51, I think, right? Let's say things went worse and everybody died, and then Carpenter's crew flew in to that. Like that would have been neat, had this went differently. And the Carpenter's version was actually like, this was a prequel to the Carpenter's version, or the Carpenter version was a sequel, whichever way you want to say that. But let's say that things went worse here, and then Carpenter made his film in 82, and they go and they find this camp here, and 30 years later, and they find the thing frozen in the ice and thawed out, and the film's very similar, but obviously a little different. That would have been cool. So I guess it's just, it's trying to tell its own story, which Carpenter's version is so much different than this film. Like there's definitely similarities, but for the most part, that's a fucking remake. That's how you remake something. You make it your own while keeping in the spirit of the original film, which is what Carpenter does so fantastically in his masterpiece, The Thing. So this time, this takes place at the North Pole as opposed to Antarctica. Of course, the film starts in Alaska, but then they get the call and they fly out to the North Pole, which the North Pole actually just sits on top of the Arctic Ocean, and it's completely just frozen ice. The whole landscape is just frozen ice. It's not even actual land. You're like on top of water, which is really, really interesting. But yeah, they go there, and this is when they find a flying saucer. Anytime I hear any dialogue that makes its way from Halloween, of course I'm sitting there and I'm with Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace on that couch, or Tommy and Lori. That's always, anytime I hear any single like music, anything from this film that connects to Halloween, I'm like instantly transported to Halloween. And I love that Carpenter put The Thing in Halloween, and then 4 years later ended up remaking that film. So I always love that kind of foreshadowing when I watch Halloween. And one of the other changes, one of the very glaring, obvious changes here is that in this version there is a woman. The Thing is kind of famously known for being an all-male cast. There's not a single female in it, unless you count the chess voice, cheating bitch. But in this film, we get a full-on woman, and she's like one of the main characters of the film. So that's actually kind of funny, because it's typically the more modern films. It's when you go and forward in time that you kind of see more progressive choices of like, well, let's put a woman in it this time, which is kind of what happened with the Thing prequel. Is the main character, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, was female in a prequel to a film that was known for having an all-male cast and not a single woman. So it's like a woman, no women, woman. kind of an interesting. It doesn't really matter at all, but I've just noticed that in that film that there's, obviously a lack of femininity. Although the doc in The Thing does have a nose ring. I've always found that so bizarre. A nose ring. How many fucking doctors do you know who have like nothing else on their body, no other piercings, no other tattoos, has a nose ring? It's got to be one of the most bizarre fucking, accessories I've ever seen on a man like that. I've never met a guy who's like seemingly straight-laced, normal, professional doctor, this and that, and he's just got a fucking nose ring. It's so bizarre. What's funny too is I think I said this in my review. I never noticed it until the Blu-ray. I never noticed it on the DVD. I never noticed it on the VHS. But when I got that Blu-ray, I was like, is he wearing a fucking nose ring? And sure as shit, the closer you look, it's like he's wearing a full-on like gold or silver nose ring. It's crazy to me. Anyway, I find there's so many parts of this movie that I was like, oh come on. But it's a movie from the early 50s. You always have to just take it for how it's presented, But yeah, they fly over this obvious circular area of like ice that's been carved out. In that scene, it's really bizarre because they have like the sliding area where then the flying saucer like came to a halt, and then it kind of melted through the ice, and then the ice froze back over it very quickly, I might add. It was like, that's another thing with this movie. The craft lands, and then they're out there really soon, like within a day or two, or I don't know how fast it is, but it's really, really fast. It's like that week for sure, or maybe, I don't think it's that day, could be, but I don't think it's that fast, because I think they say a specific day, like a Wednesday or Thursday, so that suggests to me that it's been a couple days. But of course, in Carpenter's version, it's been there for 100,000 years, or at least that's the guess from, the guy who's like, makes that assessment. But yeah, in this one, I love how they fly over it, and it's obviously circular. And then at the end of like that track where it slid to place, it looked like there was a truck at the end of it. Was that a mess up? That looked like a fucking mess up. That looked like that truck is what made that, and then they accidentally like shot it into the picture and then like didn't edit it out right before they got to the truck. But from what I could tell really fast there was like a big truck at the end of that thing. Trucks aren't usually found, out in the middle of the North Pole. That's not typically where you find trucks. Maybe reindeers, but no trucks. But maybe I'm wrong. Anybody look at that scene where they're flying over? Anyway, the point being is that they fly over and it's clearly circular. But then they have to all get down there and then form bodies around it and be like, let's see the shape of this thing. Like, that seems so convenient, the way that's even put together. Like, let's see the shape of it. What purpose would that serve? They were going to like be able to notice anything but a circle? You know what I mean? Like, do they say the size? Is that what they say? Because that would make more sense. Let's figure out the size of this thing. And then they look out at each other and they realize they're in a big circle. And they're like, oh my God. So if it's size, that's fine. But I thought they said shape. So like, what if it was like a plane shape? Were they all gonna like, go to the top of the wing and then over here and then over there? And like, it wasn't even gonna look. How are they going to be able to make the shape of an airplane with that many people? Like, shape doesn't make any sense to me. It's just specifically written in there so that they could stand in a circle and be like, but they just flew over it and it was obviously a perfect circle. So they didn't make that assessment from the sky? I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I'm way overthinking these kinds of things and I'm probably wrong. Maybe they said size, but I'm pretty sure they said shape. And Scotty, or whatever the hell his name is, the journalist who just happens to be in the right place in the right time at freaking Anchorage, Alaska, and he's there for the call, and they let him come along, and then they're like, you can't report on this, and then he just starts taking pictures, and I guess pictures are okay. You can't report on it, you can't tell anybody, but go ahead, take pictures. This guy in his fucking pictures throughout this movie, every 5 seconds, he's like got his camera. But he's a real journalist, right? I mean, he's really trying to capture that picture, and then in the end, he says he never even got a picture, which I don't even understand how the fuck that's possible. He had so much time. That thing was in the hallway for like an hour. It was fighting with that one dude who was trying to communicate with it forever, and it's like, dude, just one snap. I mean, how hard is this? But I don't know. He's not a very good photographer. Maybe he's a better journalist. He does have those iconic lines at the end, like "watch the skies" and whatnot, which actually is very reminiscent, now that I'm thinking about it, of Stevie Wayne in The Fog. She has a sign-off that's almost very, very similar. I just put that together right now. That's probably a nod to this because of what she says of like watch the ocean or watch the fog, or fuck, it's been a while since I've watched it, but she has a monologue at the end where she talks to the people of Antonio Bay, and it sounds very, very similar to this closing of this film. So I wonder if that's, I'd have to listen to them back to back to see and assess whether or not that's blatant or I'm just making shit up in my head right now on the spot. That's probably what it is. Music in this is fantastic. I'll give it that, and I recognize it because they play it in Carpenter's version on the TV, or Carpenter's Halloween, not his version of the thing, sorry. And it's just, it's sticks out very heavily in my mind, and love it here. Best thing about the film for me, for sure. And the chick in this movie is a fucking babe. Total babe. Very, very pretty girl. And in the film, I found it, now I don't know if she actually smoked in real life, but I took kind of notice to the fact that when she lit up a cigarette, she took it in her mouth, but she never, inhaled it. And you can usually tell that's a sign of somebody on this, somebody who's an actor and they don't actually smoke, but their character does. So they're made to do it. And back then, who knows? Maybe they didn't have fake cigarettes, whatever. It looked like, and then she immediately spit it out without inhaling. But you can watch the guy, and he clearly, took it in and spit it out. Now, spit it out, blew it out, whatever. What I found interesting about that is that I took kind of note of that. Like, oh, it looks like she doesn't smoke. Maybe they just ran the scene 50 times and she just smoked 50 fucking cigarettes and was like, if I take another drag, I'm going to throw up. So maybe she did smoke. But in that moment, it looked like she was an actress who didn't actually smoke, but her character did. And the reason I'm even mentioning this is that as I said, I noticed that, and then I looked her up, because I was like, yeah, this girl's so beautiful. I wonder what else she did. And then I go, and she died at like 55 years old. And I look down, I scroll down, and she died of lung cancer. So I was like, whoa, wait, what? So that was kind of ironic that I was like, oh, she clearly doesn't smoke. And then she dies of lung cancer. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people who die of lung cancer, some of it's not even cigarette related, but there's a lot of it that's related to secondhand smoke. So it's possible she didn't even smoke and somebody else killed her with their cigarettes. So that's a shame. But this is wild speculation. Who the fuck knows? Maybe she smoked 10 packs a day. Maybe she was never around a cigarette in her life and it was completely unrelated. I just thought it was ironic in the moment that and I was like, oh, she doesn't smoke, and then lung cancer. I was like, what? So it was just the irony of seeing her death. There is a Professor Voorhees in this. I don't know if I've ever heard the name Voorhees in a film as a character name, otherwise besides the obvious. Unless you're counting actors or actresses, where there's Debbie Sue Voorhees or Lark Voorhees from Saved by the Bell, but an actual character named Voorhees that isn't Jason or Pamela, don't know of any. And all right, maybe I should take a peek at my notes at some point during this. I like how the guy gets tied up by this beautiful woman, and then she kisses him, and then his response to that is like, this is torture. Being kissed by a beautiful woman is torture. Man, you might want to look into your sexual desires, because I did not see that as torturous. I'm assuming he just meant like the actual whole ordeal of him being tied up and whatnot. How he even got tied up, As I said, I was kind of having a hard time following this. I do find it funny that the way that the creature breaks out is that there's this massive piece of ice that it's in, and the guy who's stationed to look upon it doesn't want to stare at it, so he takes a heating blanket and throws it over it to cover it so he doesn't have to look at it. And he doesn't realize that that heating blanket was actually plugged in and hot, and that's why it melts the ice, because they like break the windows to keep it cold. And this guy throws a heating blanket on it, which thaws it out enough for it to break free and rain terror and kill a couple people, which is completely off screen. We only hear about from one other character. He comes back and he's like, this guy and this guy are dead. So I think the death total in this is 2. It kills 2 people. It is obviously nothing like Carpenter's thing, where seemingly every single person dies in that film, if you don't count the video game that came out after it, where, spoilers, MacReady lives. But yeah, anyway. Oh man, when the creature breaks loose and he body slams this dog. So I've been watching all these movies with a girl named Kaylee, and it's been kind of a joke between us, because every single fucking film we've picked recently, every single one features a dog death in it. And it's just been, I was laughing last night when it happened, because I was just like, again? What the fuck is going on? This is crazy. Like, I don't see dog death in film a lot. It's kind of a taboo thing, right? Like, a lot of people get upset by it. They don't like it. And so most filmmakers choose to opt out of that if it's even there in the first place. And it's just funny that we've had, like, I want to say like 4 fucking films in a row now where a dog has died, whether it be Dario Argento's Jennifer, or that one's a cat. I don't think she kills a dog, but there's an animal death in it. And then Secret Window, dog gets a screwdriver through the head. And then this one, this fucking creature is legitimately body slamming sled dogs. I laughed out loud. Yes, animal abuse and dog deaths is terrible, and I'm not a fan of having to watch it, but man, when he it felt like I was watching like SummerSlam or fucking like Hell in a Cell or something, man. He like picks this dog, he's whoa, boom, he like full on body slam. It made me laugh out loud. I thought it was so funny looking to see that dog like flipping through the air as he like smashed him on the ground. I know that sounds horrible, and trust me, I'm saying it sounds horrible, but the way that it's shot, the way that it looks, was so funny to me. Once they find the dogs, they find a lot of dead dogs. There's a lot of dead dogs in this movie. Not as many as in Carpenter's, because he doesn't kill all the dogs in this. Which they make these dogs sleep outside. The sled dogs just straight up sleep outside, and like 40, they say it was like 60 below at one point. How the fuck could it? There's no way anything could survive 60 below outside. There's just no way. But whatever. And this thing feeds off of blood because it is an advanced plant life. That's what this one is. It's a plant life that is more advanced than humans, more intelligent than humans. Bullshit, it walks right into a fucking fly trap. I'm not buying it, but maybe this one was just hired help or something. I don't know, whatever. But this doctor is convinced that this thing is more advanced and more intelligent, and he even takes the arm and the seeds out of the arm, and he grows these like blood-eating plants that I'm assuming are going to grow into that creature, like another one. Like, that's how they have babies, is their seeds. That would make sense, but it does not try to imitate anyone or anything like that in this movie. So that's completely different in Carpenter's version. This one's more of, a creature who feeds off of human blood and lays seeds and then the plants feed off of human blood, because the doctor is feeding these things the stored plasma, which kind of plays into Carpenter's version when the blood is all drained and they wanted to do that blood test. But yeah, so that's similar-ish in this one. Somebody's injured, so they need the blood, and they go to it and it's not there, and this guy's been feeding it to these plants, so he's kind of this madman who's trying to make that discovery, right? And he is trying to order them not to kill this thing. It needs to be preserved. This is this, very important piece of science, science studying. And I get where he's coming from, but I mean, at the same time, these guys realize that this thing could take over the world. It could kill everyone. It could kill everything. Unfortunately, it landed in the North Pole where there's only like 20 people who came out there because of it. Well, some people were out there already, I think, because they already have a compound. Imagine building a compound on top of ice but whatever. But yeah, so they, let's see, what else? So there's some similarities there with the blood and whatnot, but no imitations. Man, they throw buckets of kerosene on this thing while it's on fire. That is fucking dangerous. Holy hell, man. They should have had one of them catch fire too. That would have been great, because that's probably what would have happened. The thing is pretty smart though, because it goes after their heater, and now they're just sitting in there and freezing. There's a scene where the girl's like trying to point out the guy's breaths to them, and it's like, okay, maybe this thing is more intelligent than these guys, because these guys are morons. She's like, no, look, your breath. And he's like, oh, well, it's played for humor. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, dude, you can clearly see your breath is coming out of your fucking face. Like, how are you not grabbing what this girl's throwing down? But whatever. That's my go-to line during this review, I guess. We get to keep watching the skies exit line, which is good. And I like how the one dude, I don't know which one's named Mac. Now, this is clearly where they got the name MacReady. It's not MacReady, though. He's a flight navigator in this, and his nickname is Mac. But yeah, that's where some similarity in names goes. But this one guy is like, good for you, Scotty, while he's reporting this in. Cheesiness of this dialogue and everything just, makes me laugh. And yeah, another interesting change is that when they try to excavate the crashed vessel ship, they use the thermite to try to break open the ice, and in doing so it mixes with this metal alloy, whatever the hell that ship's made of, and for some reason this like disintegrates the entire fucking thing. So they have no proof other than that monster. And in in Carpenter's, that ship is still there. And in the prequel, that ship is not only just still there, but it's actually functioning and possibly ready to fly off. And yeah, that's it. So overall, not my thing. There will be a lot of people in the comments that say they love this movie. I already got enough of those in my Facebook group. Oh, I love this one. It's some people even prefer it to Carpenter's. That fucking is crazy to me. I mean, you have every right to love this film and even hate Carpenter's version. It doesn't matter. I mean, you're into what you're into. It's just, it's hard to see things outside of your own viewpoint, right? Like, it's very hard to watch a movie that you respect and love so much and to have people be like, I don't get it, it's terrible. And you're like, wait, what? What do you mean? It's perfect. What else could you want? You know what I mean? It's very difficult to see through other people's eyes. And same thing with this. Like, I watch it and I see it as hokey, I see it as cheesy. I don't see it as all that enjoyable, but I really try to see it through the lens of other people. And I think I get pretty close. Like when I'm watching, I'm like, okay, if you're into this kind of dialogue, if you find this kind of stuff, I think they're just kind of in love with that time period. That kind of acting, that kind of dialogue works for them. It doesn't for me, because none of it feels realistic. I don't feel like anybody talks like this. I don't feel like anyone behaves or acts like this. And even though I do like unrealistic situations, I like realistic characters and realistic dialogue and realistic reactions and all that kind of stuff. And in these kinds of movies, I feel like I get none of that. And I think that if you look at the films that I do like that are older, like Psycho, I feel like that is a lot of how people talk, react, whatnot. Now it's hammed up a teeny bit here and there, but not too much. And I feel like a lot of the film feels very natural, very realistic. This one just doesn't. I do have to wonder if back in these days, you know, when actually the year I was born, 1982, I'm wondering if when The Blob and The Thing and The Fly and all these films that were being remade from the 50s, if in that time all the people who were from that era, from that generation that loved The Thing, The Fly, the Blob, whatever, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I wonder if they were like, you know, some people are, not myself, but there's a lot of people out there like, fucking remakes, man. Why can't they come up with original ideas? And it'll never be as good as the classics. Why do they even bother? And which is, of course, ironic because now it's my generation that worships these versions, the Thing, the Blob, we love the 80s versions or 70s with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and we either like and appreciate or don't even like the originals. And so that makes me wonder how many of the upcoming generation are going to prefer Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. How many of them are going to be like, yeah, like the old versions, the 80s and the 70s versions of those aren't that good, and I much prefer these are clearly better, you know, like we are with The Thing, The Fly, and whatever. And I know a lot of people will instantly be like, well, no, because these are obviously much better. The Thing is an amazing movie, and fucking, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street is terrible. To us. Yes, but that's my whole point, is that we're people back in the 80s who were from the 50s watching those and being like, no, those were clearly good and these are clearly bad. This is, you know, look at the Thing, for instance. They'd be like, oh, that was just for shock's sake. They were just trying to throw as much gore and blood. Like, I like the old films when things were a little bit more, you know, elegant and didn't have to resort to you know, throwing a bunch of blood at the screen and special effects. They didn't have to rely on those things. Back then they could just tell good stories, you know. Like everybody has their arguments for why the generation before it looks, you know. And then ones now people are like, well, look, I mean, these other films are so dated. Look how upgraded and sleek and awesome everything is. Everything looks so much better, so to them anyway. You know what I mean? So I feel like every few generations has their remake phase where you get these classic films from 10, 20, 30 years ago. Well, typically not 10, 20, 30 years ago. And then that generation coming next and being like, no, these are the better ones. Like a Child's Play or something recently. Where some people prefer that, like newer generations. I just watched a fucking live stream the other day where they actually rated the remake over the original, which just is fucking blasphemous to myself, but it's their right to believe that, and they have every right to think that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, I look at it and I'm like, oh my god, the original is far superior in every single way imaginable to me. But opinions are opinions, and that's why film is so fun, is because it's all subjective and there's no objective truths when it comes to, you know, our liking for film. It's just you like what you like, end of discussion. Anyways, so The Thing from Another World, in the books. I'm glad I finally sat down and watched it as an adult who has a channel, and I can actually discuss it, because when I watched it before, I was probably in my teenage years, and at that time I just hated it. This time I respected it more, but I still didn't enjoy it all that much. That's my thoughts on it. Anyways, what do you guys think? Is this the kind of films that you like? Are you a 50s monster film kind of person? Do you like this old-timey kind of dialogue and acting and, you know, stationary shots and whatnot? Is that more your thing? Or do you like, you know, more of the 80s stuff? Or can you genuinely love and appreciate both equally? Or where are you at? Or do you prefer more modern day films? Like, I'm curious on all that stuff, so let me know. Adios.